I'm not sure if I can be heard, but it's a little after 6, a little after 7. But I understand people are still coming into the room, so I think we're going to wait a few moments before we commence. This seemed like a good time that we could get started.
Okay, we're going to get started. Make him louder. Oh, that one. If I could have your attention. Chairs on the start, please.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone in the room. Now that we can call to order 7:05 p.m. on mine, I want to thank everybody both online and in person for attending tonight. I wish I could be there in person, but work has brought me to the great state of Texas. So I will be participating from there. We have a full agenda tonight, starting with public comment, moving on to 2 or 3 requests for reconsideration of materials, discussion of our collection development policy, meeting room use report, and discussion of that policy, update regarding library landscaping committee, finance report, director's report, and so forth. To kick things off, we have allocated upwards of 45 minutes to public comment. As we've done in the past, we're going to ask everyone who is seeking to make a public comment to do so either by signing in and lining up at the podium and or raising your hand if you're participating on the Zoom. We're going to be allowing for 2 minutes for public comment for folks in the room. People will be assisting to give the 30-second and 1-minute warnings. We ask that everybody be respectful while speakers are speaking, sharing their beliefs. We want everyone to refrain from comment, interruption, criticism, applause, anything. This is the opportunity for people to state their public comment to the board, and we would like everyone to have that opportunity clearly, and particularly with those of us both in the room and some of us participating remotely to make sure we can all hear it. So with that, I would like to open up the public comment, and to the extent that anyone who has made one of the requests would like to go first, we can certainly move to that, and then we can proceed through the orderly fashion between in-person and Zoom.
As you said, it's 2 minutes. The timer will count down for you.
Thank you. My name is Brian Curry, and due to the time limit, I will talk fast. Tricks by Ellen Hopkins is a book about child prostitution, child rape, child abuse, child molestation, underage drinking, illegal drug use, and many other lewd, non-age appropriate content. This book is marketed to children as young as 11, and per library staff, children of any age can take out any book in the library regardless of content. The title is Tricks, and per Webster's dictionary, tricks is, and I quote, a sexual act performed by a prostitute. So we have a book about child prostitution with the title referencing prostitution in our children's library and is marketed for them to read. People who support Tricks call the book a bestseller. Tricks is a bestseller because the United States is one of the largest consumers of child pornography in the world. As I read this content, imagine your teenage daughter or son reading this. And for the record, this is not enjoyable. It is stressful. It's embarrassing. I was out of state at a family vacation and had to come back to read this filth. What's wrong, kid? Never done it with a real man before? He pushes me to my knees. I close my eyes, fight not to gag, trying not to choke on his thrust against my throat. He moves behind me, reaches down between my thighs. Look how hard he is. He pushes me toward the bed, urges me face down. Oh yes, I'm afraid it might hurt. An odd blend of fear and excitement. For some fucked up reason, I'm excited. I can't want this, but he doesn't stop. Nothing has ever felt so good. Is this the type of content we want our daughters reading? Is this the message we want to send to our young boys? That you can rape a girl, and even though she's screaming in pain, she deep down will enjoy it. Our tax dollars pays for this filth, okay? Because we parents speak out against this. There is harm and danger causing our children. We're called book banners, radical, divisive, and discriminatory. The only people that are being discriminated against is our children. Board of Library, you are volunteers, and we do not hold you accountable for this content, but please do the right thing this evening. Library staff, you need to do a full audit of this library. And as long as these books are here, children are not safe in this library. Thank you for hearing my comments.
I'm going to first read a letter written by my daughter, and then I'm going to read my own. I signed for both of us. Yes, you have to. Dear trustees of Reading Public Library, my name is Amanda Lieberman. This is my daughter. And I grew up in Reading, Mass. If you went to the Reading Public Library nearly any time from 2001 to 2013, there is a large chance you have seen me there. I grew up next to Chumley. Should I start over? That's fine. Okay. I grew up next to Chumley and the children's librarians. Reading Public Library provided me the foundation for my later academic accomplishments. I received my doctorate in May and recently won an award for my HIV research at an international conference. I recently received word that 2 books at the library have been proposed for reconsideration, an Orwellian term for banning. One of these books, Tricks by Ellen Hopkins, is a book I read at age 14 from the library's teen spot. The book has stuck with me to this day. It describes the stories of ordinary teens who end up in the sex work industry due to the circumstances of their lives, and it addresses a multitude of real-world issues: trafficking, substance abuse and addiction, and various types of exploitation. I've heard the ban is requested due to LGBTQ themes. Some of the aforementioned teens turn to sex work after being driven out of the house from their families for being LGBTQ. In other words, the fear and prejudice driving people to ban this book are some of the very issues the book itself discusses. Rather than promoting LGBTQ relationships or lifestyle, the book castigates the families that force their children into homelessness due to sexual orientation. I wonder about the motivations of the parents seeking to ban such messaging. I urge the trustees of the Reading Public Library to think hard before banning current and future teens from reading books as impactful as Ellen Hopkins' Tricks. Ironically enough, the Reading Public Library used to have a shelf of banned books during Banned Books Week. Please feel free to write to me if you have any questions or concerns. Better yet, read Tricks. Now mine. My name is Rebecca Lieberman, and I've lived in Reading for 23 years. I would like to express my strong opposition to...
Rebecca, sorry, that's time.
Oh,
there's time at the end, though. You can come back up.
Oh, okay.
But we want everybody to have a chance.
I'm sorry. My name is Rebecca Lieberman, and I've lived in Reading for 23 years.
No, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was 2 minutes. That's your time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Just before
Everybody have a chance.
I speak, I just want to,
Before I speak, I just want to say
Excuse
for
me.
the record, having spoke with many.
I'm sorry,
people-
excuse me, are the chairs trying to address?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, sir. First, I want to have a reminder for everyone to speak their name and address before they speak, but also to be fair, to go between the room and Zoom. Was there any public comment in Zoom? Michelle, does anyone have their hands up, or are we okay to continue with this gentleman?
We are okay to continue.
Okay, thank you. Sir, please go ahead.
Right.
Thank you.
Just to Matthew, Briarwood Ave, I just want to say for the record, to counter Mr. Lieberman's statement, I've spoken with many people in this room who've had an issue with this book. Not a single person has said their concern is associated with LGBTQ students. That is a load of crap, which is divisive. So now for my comment. All right, listen, Tricks publisher Simon & Schuster officially describes the title as, quote, a book that turns you on and repels you at the same time, unquote. A Reading resident and supporter of the book who rallied most of today's audience acknowledged, and I quote, is it appropriate for every teen? Absolutely not. It's meant for teens mature enough to read it. This statement in the library's inability or disinterest in monitoring access is why parents seeking to protect their kids have made Tricks among the most banned books in America. Here's another passage. Quote, his arms wrap around me and his rough hands go straight to my boobs. I try to knock them away, but I'm no match for his strength. You like it rough, because I'm just the guy to give it that way. He's on me, yanking my hair, pushing me to my knees. He flips me over. He's on me, in me, humiliating me. The above caption is of a child being raped by a man, and the person who sold her as a prostitute is her mother. This summer, the movie Sound of Freedom revealed the world of sex trafficking. Despite the theme, the movie producers explored this insidious topic by conveying the horror without depicting graphic violence. The movie was rated PG-13. Had the director chosen to stage scenes as realistic as the rape, sodomy, and suffering found in Tricks, the picture would have been garnered an R rating, not admitted under 17, or even an X where nothing left to the imagination. Yet the public is asked to turn a blind eye and forgo concerns when the medium is prose. I just have a question: is how is this book, to paraphrase Simon & Schuster, which in part eroticizes child rape and defilement, good for 11-year-olds' development, any child for that matter? Health professionals reject the idea that students suffering from historic level of depression and anxiety benefit from greater access to graphic depictions of sexual violence and dehumanization.
Thank you.
Will you?
It's your time.
Next person.
Evan Lucy, Pearl Street. Another passage, quote, I tried to run, but he was faster. Tried to fight, he was stronger. Tried to scream, he choked my cries. When he finished, thank God it didn't take long. He rolled off me with a grunt. I crawled into the bathroom to scrub away the evidence. Not that I dare tell anyone. When he finally followed me, he finally said, tell a soul, I'll do to your little sister too. He knew that was a bigger threat because I knew he would come back for Mary, and she was only 8. If he did this to her, she'd die for sure. It almost killed me. I'd probably always link sex with pain. I don't even feel comfortable reading that. I mean, and I'm a grown man. Children should not have access to these books. I mean, it's disturbing that you're putting this in a teen room. We all know the content is incredibly harmful for children. Common sense, rational thinking, and the laws are geared towards trying to prohibit this behavior. In addition, there have been several medical publications that have the harm pornography does to children. Here are a few. The American College of Pediatrics had a June 2016 publication on the impact of pornography on children. Here's the abstract. Consumption of pornography is associated with increased rates of depression, anxiety, acting out, and violent behavior, a younger age of sexual debut, sexual promiscuity, increased risk of teen pregnancy, and a distorted view of relationships between men and women. The American College of Pediatrics urges healthcare professionals to communicate the risks of pornography use to patients and their families and to offer resources both to protect children from viewing pornography and to treat individuals suffering from its negative effects. Having books like Tricks and dozens of other books with similar content in the teen section increases the negative impact of all the symptoms above. Teen Tinter, analysis of App Store reviews of adolescent friendships apps 2022. Per the American College of Pediatricians, the internet provides numerous opportunities for adolescents to meet and chat with people who they have never met in person. These interactions allow for the possibility of crime and exploitation, including exposure to child pornography, stalking, and harassment. Although apps specifically for dating such as Tinder and Grindr require the use to be 17 plus, numerous apps. Thank you.
John Barrett, North Reading. Very briefly, distributing pornography to minors under 16 is a felony. Parents have no choice in this matter. There's no parental consent. There's no permission slip to sign out a book that's pornography to an 11-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. If a child goes into a bookstore and tries to get Hustler magazine, that's pornography. They can't get to it. Distributing pornography to minors under 16 is a felony, and this library should not support it. Thank you.
I'll just
Rock, paper, scissors.
elaborate, no, just to
online?
continue his thought, anyway. Joanne Mixes, Jackson Lane. Per 18 U.S. Code 1470, transfer of obscene material to minors. This is how it's worded. Whoever, using the mail or any facility or means of interstate or foreign commerce, knowingly transfers obscene matter to another individual who has not attained the age of 16 years, knowing that such other individual has not attained the age of 16 years or attempts to do so, shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. This book is obscene and distributing it is against the law. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands of books that are not allowed in the library, and rightfully so, because they promote hate, racism, sexism, and are discriminatory. How many books are there supporting the KKK, ISIS, Nazis, etc.? Hopefully none. Rightfully so, this library should not have these books, but as soon as we parents advocate for removing books that have child pornography and sexually explicit and non-age appropriate, we are called book banners. How come pornography can stay, but other harmful books are not allowed? How does that make sense? It doesn't. These books normalize pedophilia, sex with children, child rape, child molestation. Pedophilia, child molesters, and child sex traffickers read this type of content, not normal law-abiding citizens such as all of us, and certainly no child should be reading it. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Moriarty, Pearl Street, Reading. Thank you for reading the definition of what child pornography is, and I appreciate that you and no one else here can cite a single time that this book is found in violation of that statute. If this was child pornography, it would be found in violation of the law, and it hasn't been. So let's dispense with the idea that it's child pornography. It's not. Second, judging by the fact of how many people are in this room, many people in this room have been victims of sexual assault. This book helps you understand and helps kids who may be the victims of sexual assault. They're not alone. If that happens to your son or daughter, they should know that they're not alone. And this happens to numerous people all over the country, all over the world, and right here in Reading. So if you don't want your kids to read it, guess what? Don't let them read it. If you don't want to talk to your kids, if they do read it, that's your problem, not mine. But don't make decisions about what my kids can read for me, please. Thank you very much.
Cynthia Matthew, 20 Briarwood Ave.
And Christine Hull, 4 Beaver Road.
I just want to remind everyone, in 1970, we signed the obscenity exemption statute. It was signed for police because they have to look at pornography and nude material of children at a crime scene in order to investigate and share this. And the medical establishment came in and said, we do too. And then they slipped in education and libraries. This is why you could see a picture of a naked woman in a library and it's legal. But if you take that same picture, show it to a child on the street, it becomes a felony. These books from the library and what is going on in our schools is grooming our kids. This is the first step towards child pornography, child slavery, child sex trafficking. I bet I could ask anyone in this room, when was the last time you watched porn? You'd say, oh, it's been months or never. And I'd say, you're lying. Close your eyes. What do you see? Well, I see all the porn images I've seen before. I'm watching it right now. You can't erase it from a child's brain. When a child sees images from these books, he sees every boy in these positions having sex or sucking a penis. He fantasizes about it. These books are teaching children to look at these porn images and not just look at it, but if you don't agree with it, but if you don't do this, you're the one that's wrong. The left knows what they are doing. They are farming. They are planting a seed in fertile soil. God's promise, if you plant a seed in fertile soil, it will grow. There is a 10-year-old boy who is addicted to porn. He watches 2.5 hours of porn a week. His introduction to porn was a question in the classroom about sexuality. He never heard of it. He went home, Googled it, went on YouTube and typed in anal sex. A plethora of videos came up. All of a sudden, this kid is hooked on porn. You can't turn it off now. You have now changed the way he views the world, the way he will love, how he looks at a woman, how he will treat his wife.
Thank you.
So I have a problem with my cornea right now, and we wrote this together. She's going to take my 2 minutes and read it.
You have set that kid on a path of destruction. You may be asking yourself, why? Why are they, the left, pushing this so hard on our kids? One reason this is happening is because the left establishment wants to weaken our youth so they can become more
Can you
controllable.
pause for a second, please? We're allowing.
They've taken her time.
She said it. Her name.
My name is Christine Hope.
Excuse me, it's my understanding there are two people at the podium and that they both have their 2 minutes. And if they want to combine it, that is fine. Is that what I understand from being in the
Yes,
room? I can't
that
hear
is
with
correct.
the background
Can you
noise.
please restart her time?
Please,
I did restart her time.
I would like to please continue, and I would like to remind the public room to be quiet, especially in between discussions, so everyone is allowed their opportunity. Please continue.
Please restart the time.
I did restart the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
You may be asking yourself why. Why are they, the left, pushing this so hard on our kids? One reason this is happening is because the left establishment wants to weaken our youth so they could become more controllable. A weak youth is one that is over-sexualized and distracted. The most powerful weapon on earth is sex. When you use sex as a weapon to a child, you will destroy your child's life. You will control that child. When he or she is 18 or 19, they will not fight for truth, justice for all, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Constitution. They will not defend this nation. Why? Because when a human being is victimized sexually, they are like a turtle that pulls its head into its shell. They go into survival mode. The left knows this. Alfred Kingsley showed them this. Hitler talked about this.
Excuse me, we're here to talk about these books.
Yep, if
This
they
is
can
politics.
sexually
You're not- no,
compromise
you're not
American
talking at all.
children, they will become subordinate, and they will not fight. Parents all across this nation need to wake up and stand up and protect our most vulnerable, our children. These books need to be kept out of our libraries. Thank you.
My name is Lily. I live in Reading on Cherry Lane Drive. I grew up here in Reading and read many books both in and out of school and not just at the library that delved into intense topics like these. It was difficult for me to read. I did not enjoy these books, but it armed me with information to protect myself from abuse found in books like Tricks. Teenagers are already exposed to inappropriate things on the internet. Shouldn't they know what to do if they are put in unsafe situations? Shouldn't they have the language to ask for help? We have good evidence that failing to teach children about potentially controversial topics does not keep them safer. Abstinence-based sex education leads to increased teen pregnancy. Teaching children about safe and healthy forms of touch and relationships reduces risk of child abuse. Banning teenagers from reading a book about exploitation will not keep them safer from this real societal danger. On the contrary, preventing them from learning about exploitation may make our Reading teens more vulnerable. Thank you.
My name is Lynn Dornick. I live in Cherry Lane Drive. I'd like to express my strong opposition to the proposal to remove access for teens to the books Tricks and Assigned Mail. Tricks is a beautiful and highly acclaimed book that tells the story of 5 teens and their experiences through a series of prose poems written by the characters. Assigned Mail is made up of a series of comic strips about a trans character and his friends. These books discuss important issues, sexual exploitation in the case of Tricks, and finding one's way as a transgender youth in the case of Assigned Mail in thoughtful and age-appropriate prose. Some of those in favor of banning Tricks seem to believe that avoiding difficult subjects will make the issues go away. Unfortunately, we know that sexual exploitation of children occurs everywhere, including within supposedly safe spaces such as families, churches, and schools. A book like Tricks reflects the reality of our world. I would argue that it provides valuable information to children about the ways exploitation occurs and helps arm them against predatory behavior. It's also worth noting that the book has been read by thousands of young people. Objections to assigned male seem to be rooted in the false notion that exposing children to information about trans people will make them want to become transgender. This is ridiculous. Following this logic, we would need to ban all books involving murder, as reading them will turn children into murderers. Give people, young people, credit for being able to think critically, and reading about others' experience enhances that ability to understand the motives behind others' actions. I also urge you to change the policy to challenge a book. Specifically, I would like to see you require a certain number of verified Reading resident signatures, along with a detailed rationale for a challenge to be considered. Tricks has been around since 2009 and on the shelf at RPL's teen room. Why is it being challenged now? Just as in a courtroom, the burden of proof should be on the challenger to provide a compelling reason to remove access to a book.
Hi, Carolyn Johnson, Thorndike Street. I implore members of BOLT not to give in to the small group of residents who continue with their attempt to dictate what books should be in the Reading Public Library based on their personal views and under the guise of protecting our children. I wonder what people who want to do so envision. A review board where every book in the Reading Public Library is scrutinized, and anyone who finds anything objectionable in any book can request its removal. The results would be dystopian and damaging to our community. Even though the content in these books may make some uncomfortable, it is not for those people to determine what others can read. And it is up to parents to determine if and when their own children are ready for certain books. Thank you, Bolt, and the entire RPL staff. I appreciate what you do.
Hi, my name is Marcy McCauley, 32 Walden Road, Wakefield. I find it interesting that someone brought up that if you read books about murder, then you'll become a murderer. And what comes to my mind is when I saw my 11-year-old's video games about killing 7-Eleven clerks and the graphic violence, I certainly don't think we need more graphic violence. I think there's plenty of graphic violence. There's plenty of sex assaults. There's plenty of children being exposed to things that they're not ready for. And all of a sudden, we're being told that we can't teach anyone anything unless we let them experience it themselves. This is absurd. We all know this is absurd, that you don't need to have children reading the graphic sex stories that was read out loud here to teach them to be aware that they could become a victim of a predator, to be aware of trafficking, to be aware of drugs, to be aware of sex abuse. Of course we can do that. And I learned a lot about life issues reading The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck, my favorite childhood novel. And there's plenty of ways we can teach people. So I don't think we need the graphic sex, and I don't think we need the graphic violence for children. And I hear all this book banners. Well, there are reasons that there are things in place for children. I was raised on a farm. I learned to drive at 11 years old. So let's let all children drive at 11 years old, because I did a fine job and all the people that I know did a fine job. So this argument doesn't hold up. There are age restrictions on various things for a reason. And one thing that nobody's pointing out, I think we're setting up younger children in the home to become victims to this experimentation that we're teaching children at very young ages, 6, 7, 8 years old, in the neighbors' homes. What are they doing with this newfound information? It's pretty concerning and scary.
Thank you. Vanessa Alvarado, Mount Vernon Street. I was reading an article recently on NPR about book banning efforts across the country. And what I found alarming is the language that was used there to justify removing books from a public library. They accuse the library of pushing sexually erotic and pornographic materials to children. They argued that they believe some books are too sexual and harmful to kids. They said these books groom children. They said somebody's trying to push an agenda and kids don't need things causing confusion in their confused little mind. They maintain they're not trying to ban books. They just want to move certain ones out of the children's and teens sections to ensure parental control over what kids are reading, and to make sure libraries are not promoting explicit content to minors. These are the exact same unfounded arguments, and sometimes the exact same words we've heard here in Reading. Heard them tonight. Make no mistake, this is a national campaign to ban books at the local level. These book banning efforts are an embarrassing waste of Reading's taxpayer dollars, all because of a national effort to ban books that deprives Reading residents from accessing books and determining what their children should read. I hope this is the last of these hostilities in our communities, and my deepest thanks and appreciation to the library staff and the Board of Library Trustees. Thank you.
Excuse me just one moment before we continue. Michelle, anyone online to go back and forth or stay in the room?
No, no one online is asking to make a comment.
Thank you. Please continue. Thank you.
Cheryl Lestrade, 22 Gold Street. I just want to know how many times people are going to be in the library trying to ban books. We use First Amendment as it's flowing water. We use it when it's convenient to us, but then we forget about it when it's not to our satisfaction. I think throwing around laws and rules and regulations only when it's convenient to your purpose is total hypocrisy. And I think it's time that we leave families to raise their children and not try to raise other people's children. We teach sex ed in school, and it's a problem. But then when there's an assault, our children don't know how to handle it. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to turn to. Everyone in this room has the right to educate their children the way they choose to. You don't have the right to censor other people and other people's way of raising their children. That's what these books do. There's a lot of things going on in the world. Rape is one of them. Prostitution is one of them. And how children learn to work around these problems and who they can go to, they may learn something from some of these books. It may not be the things that you're thinking of, the negative aspects. And if you think about it, if the children want to read them, whether they find them in the public library or they go to Barnes and Nobles, because not all of you go to Barnes and Nobles with your children when they go. You don't know what they're bringing home. It's a conversation that you have with your children, and you trust that what you teach them, they will go out and follow. And that's all I'd like to say.
Hey, Keith Chuddick, 20 Echo Avenue here in Reading. I've been here since 2016. I'm against banning books. I think that's silly. In terms of points here, we're talking about the First Amendment saying children can't defend it if they read this material. This is an attack against the First Amendment. We're talking about the public library, not a school library, not a school curriculum. We're talking about what's available to the public. The Good Earth was mentioned a while back. There's prostitution in that book. But fair enough. We're talking here about what are people exposed to and who can make that decision. And I feel like mind your business, and I'll just leave it at that.
John Silva, Reading, Fairchild Drive. I just found out about this recently. The question I have, if I had a Playboy magazine in my house, would I want my kids to see it? Now, you've heard many years ago, what is the definition of pornography? We can't define it, but we know when we see it. So, different people have different impressions of what is pornography and what is not. But if anything's on the edge, why do we risk having our children see something that could be problematic? Now, the discussions about, if we don't have this there, the kids aren't going to be able to figure out about this. Well, there needs to be people in the school that they can go and ask. They need to have families. Now, sometimes the abuse happens in families. They can't ask their parents or family members, but that's a separate problem from the books. The other thing is the books, they can, why do they have to be in the Reading Public Library? You can buy it online. If you really want it for your kids, then you can gatekeep whether or not your kid reaches that, not them randomly going to the library and picking up this book. Thank you.
Ready? Hello, my name is Albert Cianasuaso, and I live at 25 Rustic Lane in Reading. And I just also found out about this night just recently, and I wanted to come here with my wife and I. And in my mind, from the big picture, I asked myself, are we putting our children and our grandchildren in a better position than we all were when we were in our 40s, 50s? And now that we're in I'm over 60 years old. My wife and I have 3 children, and we've been blessed with 6 grandchildren. And we have 6 grandchildren between the ages of 5 and 12. And I grew up in a family of 8 children. My beautiful Irish mother had 8 children in 12 years. And she would roll over in her grave if even the thought of this, even just a short 10, 15 years ago, all this transgender stuff going on with our children, there was so much confusion. And I don't know, I've been in Reading for over 30 years, so about 30 years, 1993. And I don't know if anybody in this room has 6 grandchildren, but when you're blessed with a grandchild, and you see this grandchild growing up in this world, and you think of what is going on around us, and how long do you think this is going to last? I happen to be a Catholic, and I think religion is great and faith is great for ourselves in this world. And there's less and less faith in this world, and there continues to be a great reduction in faith in this world. Where do you think this is going to bring us in another 2 or 3 generations? Where do you think we're going to end up in 2 or 3 generations? Thank you. I'm greatly opposed to these books being allowed in the Reading Library. 30 years we've been here. I hate to move, but I'm greatly opposed to it.
Hi, Liz Whiteland, 7 Gilmore Avenue. I've lived in Reading for 21 years. I also own Whiteland Books downtown in Reading at 610 Main Street. We have been open for almost 6 years. And here's what I know. Book people care about people. Book people care about community, and book people do not do anything without a lot of consideration and thought. The Reading Public Library staff is an incredibly well-trained, hugely qualified, and phenomenally caring organization. They do not just willy-nilly put things on shelves trying to cause problems in our community. They understand, as all book people do, that books are a means through which people, including children, can process information sometimes that is challenging. One of the conversations that we frequently have with parents in the bookstore is, if you want to talk to your child about a topic that's difficult and it's available in a video or other medium or a book, start with a book. It is actually easier. It is proven that it's easier for kids to process through reading. It is safer and less traumatic. We always say, if your kid is reading Harry Potter, you actually should have them wait 3 more years per book before they watch it. Books are helpful for kids. They're helpful for the community. But more importantly here, this library is helpful for the community. It is staffed by professionals who are being caring and thoughtful, and I am grateful for them and the Board of Library Trustees. You have a process. I hope the community will allow you to just follow it and do your job and stop interfering and trying to ban things book by book. Thank you so much for your service and your time and your patience and your insights and for enduring all of this. And I am sorry that you have to do it over and over again.
Sorry that you're enduring things. It's funny.
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating your name? I just didn't get it.
Michelle Arlington. It's not enduring something. I think if it's a job and you're trying to do the right thing. So I just wanted to be clear that this is not about homophobic, transphobic, LGBTQ phobic, anything. It's about protecting children. My understanding that this book is going to be available for kids from K through 5. That's not teenager, that's not even preteen. And the graphic stuff that's in that book That should really disturb you. Is it Amy down the end? That should really disturb you. I mean, I hope you're listening to the people here and the parents that are very concerned about the things that are written in this book that a second grader could get. And it's not about parents being uncomfortable, not being able to speak to their children. It's that we don't want them to read this graphic, anal sex, rape, pornographic. It's very graphic. I don't know if you've read it. I hope you do read it. And then you'll realize that you have to stop this and you should protect the children. And I hope you do. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin O'Brien. I live here on School Street. I have 3 young children. I wouldn't want them to read the book, but I am absolutely opposed to any kind of book ban. I think that families need to decide for themselves. I know my 2 oldest recently got their first library cards. They are so excited. I had to sign a permission slip that they are allowed to have their own library cards because they are minors. The books that they check out get emailed to me. I see a list of what's due. I monitor what comes into our home. If you're not comfortable with your children checking out these books, go to the library with them. Take them there. You have access to their card. You can decide if they're allowed to get their own library card and check them out. If you're worried about them sitting in the library and reading it by themselves, don't let them go by themselves. It is up to each individual family and parent to do what they think is best for their own family. And I don't think that it's fair for others to limit that for everyone. Thank you. Is
there anyone online?
No.
I think we have time for a couple more, Pat, if anyone else wants to speak.
Yes, I believe so, unless if there's anyone in the room or online.
Did you want to come back up?
Okay.
Oh. I would just like to say one more thing about my daughters. Thank you. Appreciate this. My daughter, who I was reading her letter about how she read tricks at age 14, I just, because I was in a hurry, I failed to mention that she is a sexual violence counselor with RAIN, and so her information comes from a place where she understands it. And I'm not sure that this was read or not, but according to the Trevor Project, 45% of LGBTQ youth in general have thought seriously of suicide, and over 50% of trans and non-binary kids have, which is why it's so important for kids to see themselves in books. And as far as the exploitation, that is also associated with very high rates of suicide. Tricks, by the way, is not just about LGBTQ youth. It does an excellent job. The characters represent all walks of life and all socioeconomic status, a variety of family situations, including 2-parent families, et cetera. So I just want to reiterate, I agree with what Lynn Dorning said, that we need to have a higher bar for book challenges, that just because anybody could say anything. Should 50 Shades of Grey come out of the library? That's pornography, one could argue. There has to be a rationale. A book that's been around for a long time, why suddenly must it go? Thank you so much.
Are we all allowed to double dip?
She was representing her own point of view. The first time was her daughter's, so what's why? But if you'd like to go again, we can ask the chair if he has more time. Please.
I'd love to.
Pat, do we still have time?
Certainly. We can give a few more moments.
Kevin Lucy, Pearl Street. So, I was at the book review previous to this one. And, I think the library's in a situation where they have to start evaluating the stuff that they're making available to children. Because I talked to a librarian for about a half an hour, and she told me she doesn't know what the big deal is because any age child can get any book. Any book. There's books in the library that show children how to use sexual toys. I don't think there's a big outcry for children wanting to know how to use sexual toys. That's in the library, and it's called Let's Talk About It. And that's in the teen room. I think maybe if, some people are saying that they don't want anyone to tell them how to parent their child. So I also don't want anyone to tell me how to parent my child, right? Should my kids be able to come here and learn about using, sexual toys? I don't think they should, right? If maybe have, like I said before, maybe have library cards for those parents who don't care what their children look at, and library cards for parents who are concerned with what their children look at. My kids can't, I said this before, my kids can't go to a bookstore and buy, M for mature video games, pornography, but they can come to the library and get that. You can get M for mature video games at the library. I don't understand why you can do it in the library, but why you can't outside of the library. I guess the person that spoke earlier made, I guess they made that relevant. The library is exempt from it, but it's like, I don't know. Kids should not have access to that, right? You're talking about books with graphically being raped in it. Is that good for 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids? I don't know. Probably not. 17-year-old, fine. But you know what? I don't know.
Thank you.
Marcy McCauley Wakefield. I just wanted to mention that today I was reading the news at work, and I read, I think, Boston 25 and all the local channels. And over the weekend, there was a woman in the South End that was attacked and assaulted. And in all the news stories that I read, it said that she was left bloodied and dazed, but she had non-life-threatening injuries, and she was taken to the hospital. So that was great news. But one thing, it didn't talk much about the guy who jumped in to rescue her per se, which thank goodness that he was there. And I applaud people who jump in to help others when in a time of need like that. So I decided that I wanted to go and find out more about him because there wasn't much said. So I Googled his name, and Channel 7 actually wrote about him, and they actually had the vision to write exactly what happened, and none of the other channels that I read about had that vision. They just kind of glossed over the fact that she was fine, And so Sam Holder told Channel 7 that he and his father were watching a football game when they heard the woman screaming for help and made the decision to spring into action. We heard a shriek, so I came outside, he recalled. There was a lady laying there on the ground with her pants down, her panties down, guy on top of her. Other people were recording. I have sisters, mothers. My whole family consists of mostly women. I just hit him. I jumped in because I had no other choice. She was screaming and bloody with her pants down around her ankles. And I find it interesting that all of the stations kind of just ignored that, little piece of it. But we're setting children up to learn about things they're not ready to learn about. And when small children, and that's really my concern, small children are going to become the victims of older children who don't exactly know what to do with this newfound sexual techniques that they've learned at the library. Thank you.
There is one person online who would like to speak.
Okay. Want to tell her she's on mute?
Yeah.
Unmute her. Oh, do I have to do it? Ask her to.
Yep.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you very much. I did send a quick email earlier today because I didn't think I would make the meeting, but my other commitment ended quick, so here I am. I apologize if I say things other people have said, because again, I missed some of this, but just for the last few speakers, I find it just surprising that people are so concerned about the library when kids today have the internet. If they want to learn how to use a sex toy, they can do that right online. Lots of parents are not monitoring what their kids are doing online. So I suggest if you want to protect your kids, you start there. The library should be a safe place where all children and all people, teenagers, adults, kids, can go and find books of what they're interested in. It makes sense to me that the options are there, and that if you are concerned about what your kid might check out, then go with them to the library. My kids have never really gone on their own, and they're teenagers now. We all go together. I look for books, they look for books. We talk about what everybody's getting. It's easy for you to be able to monitor what your kid is taking from the library. And you should use that instead of trying to tell other people what their kids can and can't have access to. I'd like to make that decision for my own kids. Thank you.
Me too.
Okay, I think we're close to 45 minutes. It looks a little bit like there's one other person who's walked close to the podium. So why don't we have one more speaker, and then appreciate everyone's concise nature tonight.
Okay, so I brought this, and I'm not trying to go tit for tat and keep going back and forth. So as I said, it's difficult. You have 2 minutes, you get emotional. I'm not trying to argue with anybody. Bottom line, we just want what's best for our kids. We certainly respect other people's experiences and what they've been through. We're not trying to attack anybody. We're just trying to protect our children. And, we think there's a lot of common sense viewpoints about just pornography is not good for children. There was a gentleman who talked about being a victim of sexual assault. We certainly, can sympathize and empathize with that. I have never talked about this publicly. I told my brother this about a year ago. I told my wife this. Okay, I was molested by a doctor. Okay, now I'm not saying that other than we all have experiences. We're not trying to, attack anybody. This is very personal for me to talk about. But the point is, as a community, we just want some common ground. We've read very graphic things, and we want to try to just meet. Maybe I don't even think in the middle makes sense, but when we go back and we argue and we cheer, it's just like, this is not enjoyable. We just want to come down and maybe meet in the middle somewhere, because I don't want to do this every month. But if I have to protect children, I'll be here next month, and I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way. So thank you for listening, and sorry if we got upset or anything, because we're not trying to do that. We're just trying to, again, protect children. So thank you. And now I got to call my parents and tell them that.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Pat, one
yes.
more? One more is asking.
One more.
Thank you. Anne Marie Burnson, Brook Street, Reading. I came here in opposition to a book ban, and I'm surprised to hear religion being brought into this, grooming being brought into this, freedom of speech being brought into this. This is really about 2 books that somebody finds offensive, or several people find offensive and don't want in this library. And I respectfully ask you to focus on that request and not anything outside of that realm. Whether somebody's Catholic, it's irrelevant to this matter. Whether somebody thinks it was a violation of freedom of speech, I'm not sure that that's relevant to this matter. What is relevant is the fact that, how long has this book been around? How many times has somebody brought it to your attention to whether or not it does not belong in this library or in other libraries around the country? The fact that I appreciate what you just shared with us in a public forum, that cannot be, a comfortable thing for you to do. But I will tell you, my 13-year-old daughter was assaulted by a boy last year. Where was she going to get information on how to deal with that? I speak openly to my children. My daughter only came to me because she knew she could trust me, and she knew that through teachings throughout her age, that these are things that can happen. She came to me. I knew how to instruct her to deal with that, and she had resources she could go to. She has the right to have access to things that I think she should be able to. And you have the right to restrict your children. And, do you have daughters that have been assaulted at 13 years old?
I don't want to get into the fact. Don't say that. It's just.
Thank you.
That's very
Okay. Thank you, everyone. At this point, we're approaching the top of the hour, so we're closing public comment. On behalf of the entire board, I want to thank everybody who came tonight, online, in person, and spoke up. Obviously, this is an issue with a lot of strong passion, strong feelings on all sides. I also want to thank everyone who took the time to write in. It is appreciated. It's one thing for everyone to, complain on the corner. It's a lot different to, step up. So we do very much appreciate public comment. Public comment is now closed. We're going to move to the heart of our meeting and discussion. At this point, we're going to be going through the rest of the agenda, speaking and getting the information from library and staff on some of the issues, particularly related to the two requests, and then discussing it. So because the public comment is over, I ask that everyone, both online and in person, be respectful and quiet so that we can all be able to hear what everyone's doing. So with that, I'd like to move to the request for reconsideration. And before we start, I'd just like to get a clarification as to Tricks by Ellen Hopkins, or whether we are entertaining one or two requests.
Is this on? Is this on? Okay. We're really entertaining one request. There was a second request, but we've now been unable to verify that the person is a Reading resident. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but our policy does require that all RFRs be brought by a Reading resident. So.
Okay. Well, either way, the substance is addressed by the second request. So I think we can move on to the request for reconsideration materials, starting first with Tricks by Ellen Hopkins.
Could you just wait a moment? We're trying to get trustee online with unmuted. I don't think I can. Last time. Okay. Jerry, if you can hear us, you should be able to *6 now.
Yes, I already did.
Great. Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. Share my screen. All right. So I'm just, thank you, Pat. I'm just going to kind of go through the process that we do when we have, when we're doing general collection development. And our full collection development policy is available online on our website. But I just want to remind you all that here are some of the guiding principles. The library does not advocate for particular belief or views. The selection of any given item is not an endorsement of the viewpoint expressed. The great diversity of the library's customers means the library must do more than provide materials for the common denominator in order to be effective. It is deemed the responsibility of parents and caregivers to determine what their children may read, watch, or listen to, and selection of materials is not restricted by the possibility that young people may obtain materials their parents and caregivers consider inappropriate. And if the materials meet the criteria of selection, they will not be removed from the collection because of pressure by any group or individual. With regards to Tricks, I just also wanted to briefly go over the selection process. We do have people who select our materials. They are professional librarians. Their resources that they use are authoritative professional reviews, popular reviews, publishers' catalogs, standard lists of backworks, which we call core collections, firsthand examination, and we do listen to patron requests for adding to our collection. The general criteria is that it must be relevant to the library's mission or core values. We also look at current usefulness, interest, and/or permanent value. There's also popular demand, relevance to existing collection, standards of quality in content and format, as well as price.
So we're going to skip over the June 23rd request for reconsideration. We will start with the July 10th, which was brought by Mr. Curry, and staff notified the board. The collection services team has assessed this title. And for those of you who are not familiar, Tricks is a 640-page novel in verse or poetry, originally published in 2009. I won't go through these individual excerpts, but they're from a school library journal and book list, which are two reputable resources. It is an award-winning book, albeit from 2009. The level assigned is young adult, which is the teen collection, which is for us is ages 11 and up, but that's quite a span. But that is the teen collection. We ordered the print copy in February 9th of 2010. There's a digital audiobook also available. We have 2 copies. We ran these numbers when the request came in, so our copies have actually circulated a bit more this year, just in the last month. But it does have a decent circs for a book. It continues to circulate, basically, so someone finds it interesting every year.
Amy, can I ask a question on the last slide?
Yes.
The figures, 2 copies RPL, 6 copies Noble, does that mean 8 total or 6 total?
That means
6 total.
It means 6 total.
4.
Yes, 4 Noble. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
And I mentioned this at the last meeting, or one of the other meetings, is occasionally you will see things like 2 or more, multiple copies. Sometimes that's because of demand. Sometimes one went missing and it came back to us, or there's a number of reasons why there might be more than 1 copy in the collection. The recommendation is that this title meets or exceeds the collection development standards. It has adequate circulation. And based on the ALA definition, removing this collection from the collection would be considered censorship. So it's shelved appropriately in the teen spot and should remain there. And that is the librarian's recommendation, the staff recommendation. Would you like to talk about this now, entertain a motion and discussion, or would you like to go on to talk about assigned mail? It's up to you.
I don't have a preference. I think we can, maybe we hear the overall review, the overall for both books, and then but address each of them independently.
Great, I just get to say it all at once. The Best of Assigned Mail by Sophie Labelle. On Wednesday, June 28th, we received an RFR for this material. The requested action was to remove the book from the collection. We notified the board, and the collection services team assessed this title. Those of you who don't know, Assigned Mail is a web comic that started in October 2014. Actually, it's Canadian, but we get things from all over. But it is still ongoing, or has been ongoing. The RFR for item in question is not just one of these issues. It's actually a compilation. It's called The Best Of. It's a graphic novel, and it's an anthology. So it's visual, like drawings and conversation in little bubbles. Again, I won't read through these, but it has gotten some very great reviews. It's very popular and comes with a lot of recommendations, particularly in comics, and certain, like a Stonewall winning author has mentioned that it's great. We ordered a copy in 2021, and it has circed, in the current year, it's actually circed 10 times, and it is in its 2-year life, had about 37 circs, which is actually quite good. There are 2 copies in Noble, so we are one holder of that. And this was interesting, and it does meet or exceed our collection development standards. It has more than adequate circulation. Removing it from the collection entirely would also be censorship. This is an anthology that starts with the middle school experiences and progresses through young adulthood, and that is reflected through the story. And I think that's reflected also in the fluency and the reading level. So as we discuss this with our collection services team, the title does conform to our policy, but on further review, the reading level of the text suggests that this would be better located in the teen spot collection. And that is all I have.
Okay, I'd like to see if any, as to the presentation, if any of my fellow trustees have any questions, any follow-up on those slides or the materials that were provided.
None from me.
I had a question on, anyone else?
No.
On to the best of assigned mail, which is the book under consideration, are the prior ones, are those, do we also hold those individually?
No, we only have the anthology.
Only the anthology, okay.
Is Cherry still on? Because I don't see her in the corner.
She is on, I just see her.
I'm still here.
Yay.
Okay. Barring further questions, somebody want to make a motion that could lead to a discussion?
I move that we accept the library's recommendation to keep tricks in our collection in the teen spot and move assigned mail to the teen spot.
Can I suggest
You want me to do them as separate?
I would suggest perhaps one motion per book might be cleaner.
Okay, so I move that we accept the library's recommendation to keep tricks in the teen spot.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and it has been seconded. So now I'd like to open up the floor to my trustees for a discussion, if any, limited to tricks, please, and Ellen Hopkins tricks.
I'll start. As I said, when we discussed a book 2 meetings ago, I feel very strongly that parents should be allowed to guide their children in reading and be the ultimate decision maker on what their children can read. I think it varies from family to family. And I think it's important that parents have that right. I do want to make 2 points. For some reason tonight, there seemed to be some confusion around this book. The book is in the teen spot. It's not K-5. That was mistakenly said. Someone else also said it's in the children's section. So I just want to be really clear that the book is shelved in our teen section. And I do support it staying there, and I support it staying in our collection.
Anyone else?
Sorry, I'm going to just second what Manette was saying. I think we should respect the library staff. We have a sort of a collection policy for a reason, and I don't see any reason to deviate from that for this book.
I would concur with both. I would concur with what both Monette and Andrew have said. I would agree that the book belongs where it is and we should keep it there.
This is, thank you. This is Monique Patrick. I concur with my other board of library trustees here. I appreciate the conversation that has taken place in this room and how we find a way to engage in conversations around these controversies is definitely important. But I do concur that we should keep the book in the library in the teen section.
This is Captain Pop. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Excellent. I concur with the prior board members. I'd also like to add one thing about Tricks specifically is that it provided a realistic portrayal of teen issues that affect teens. It delves into the lives of teenagers struggling with issues like addiction, sexuality, horrible exploitation. And these are real challenges that some young people face, and censoring, banning, reconsidering the book would hinder open discussions about these topics. As I've said in the past, I believe most teens today can pick up their phone and find horrible things online quicker than their feet would ever take them to a local library. And referencing what an earlier speaker said, stressful is exactly what this book should be. Another speaker said that this book stuck with them to this day, and this is exactly the point. Many children face horrible issues and circumstances like these fictional characters, but have people and communities to help. We hope children have at least 3 levels of protection: their peers, their teachers, their coaches, their admins, and their family. And maybe that's why, and these characters had none of those. And maybe that's why Tricks made me angry. Maybe sometimes a book upsets us because we realize that we don't do enough to help others in our world. And maybe we, the readers, should be inspired to do something about it. Based on what we've said earlier, I concur with the rest of the Bolt members and ultimately believe the book should stay where it is. I fully support our library director, Amy Lannon, and her excellent collection development policy, and I strongly oppose moving or reconsidering this work in any way. Thank you.
As for myself, I agree that the title meets the collection requirement of the policy. And I also have faith and trust in the professional staff to continue to monitor our collection policy. And I also, more importantly, trust parents and guardians to decide what's appropriate for their homes. And I think in this case in particular, with Tricks, there were a few things I do wish to point out. I mean, this is a book that is available. This is not something being forced on anybody. I also think that pornography is not, we know it when we see it. There are legal terms for obscenity, and this book is protected by the First Amendment and does not qualify as obscenity and does not qualify as harmful to minors. Therefore, it requires protection. I think what is really at issue and was really apparent is that this material is highly offensive and very inappropriate to a lot of people. And there are a lot of people who would not want their teens reading it. And I believe there's nothing wrong with that. And I fully support that. And people are free to avoid books and they're free to talk about why particular books are objectionable. And I just want to make a point with this. As was noted earlier, we got 2 requests originally as to Tricks. The first one was a rather lengthy request that is available in the public record and the people can see. What it did is it had many of the passages referred to and cited, and I obviously understand the public comment limitations would prevent people from, reading all those excerpts. It's a 600+ page book. But what the submitter did is have essentially a long list of page and every thing that was found objectionable, and even a little word count for certain words. And it appears to be substantially similar to, if not taken from, online resources. And there's an organization, booklooks.org, that does this. It provides resources for parents for them to look up and find objectionable sensitive comment. It also gets used, the booklooks.com gets used by another organization, Moms of Liberty. So they're out there providing additional resources for parents where they can track this information and can provide information about books. And I think that first submitter most likely was relying on that information. And I only raise this for 2 points. The first is there are a wealth of resources available to parents that they can use to analyze books. They're at your fingertips as you're surfing the library. Personally, when my kids were younger, my go-to was Common Sense Media. So I'm not endorsing it, but I did use that with books and movies. It says Tricks is teen appropriate, just by the way. But I think it's important to know that there are a lot of resources out there to help parents to know that when they're in the library with their family, if there are questions, they can quickly look up and they can see something, and they can certainly avoid something that's not right for their family. But the second reason I want to raise it is both the Book Looks organization as well as the Moms for Liberty are very explicit that while they're arming parents with information, they're not seeking to remove things from public libraries. It's very much targeted at schools and others. And even the Moms of Liberty site says we are not NOT, contacting public non-school libraries to censor their selections. So I think the very information that was provided with that first request came from an organization that would have denied this request as well. Again, it's a public library. We have a well-trained, well-educated, dedicated professional staff. They're managing our collection consistent with the policies we've laid out. And I just believe the parents need to be able to make those decisions for their family to do that. So I do not support the removal. So, I mean, barring any further comment by one of our board members or further question on the board members, I think we can entertain a roll call on the motion. Okay. Hearing none, the motion, perhaps someone in the room can help me with the precise wording.
Was to keep, the motion was to take the librarian's recommendation and keep the book Tricks in our teen collection.
Okay, that is the motion that had been seconded. We now will do a roll call vote. Trustee Dubois?
Yes, I agree.
Trustee Grimes?
I agree.
Trustee Pilo-Yanarado?
I agree.
Trustee Pop?
I agree.
Trustee Verrier?
I agree.
And I also agree. Motion carries. Would someone like to make a motion concerning assigned mail by Sophie LaBelle?
I move that we take the librarian's recommendation to move the book Assigned Mail into the teen collection.
Second.
Second the motion.
May I suggest an amendment of a motion to reject the pending request for reconsideration and accept the library's recommendation to move the book into the teen collection?
Sounds good.
I'll second it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The floor is open to discussion regarding assigned mail.
Consistent with the things they were saying about tricks before, I think for the same reasons, it's in line with our policy. It is being circulated. And I agree that we should reject the motion to reconsider it and accept the library's recommendation to move it to the teen line.
I concur with Andrew.
I concur.
One thing that I think about in terms of this request, I certainly appreciate the request coming in and the opportunity to look at the material, particularly in the anthology format, where the latter stories seem to move as the children age, but therefore so does the vocabulary and content. I do think this is an opportunity for patrons to bring something straight to the librarians and make suggestions or show it in the process rather than going through the formal request for reconsideration process. The formal request asked both to move to the teen, but also to remove from the collection. So it is still a formal request to remove from the collection. But I think having discussions with librarians can perhaps help save time and allow people to reconsider something in those situations. Barring any other questions or comments, we can take the roll call vote on the motion. Okay, so the motion is to reject the motion for reconsideration as to assign mail by Sophie LaBelle, and agree with the librarian's decision, the library's decision to move, maintain the book, but maintain it in the teen collection. Okay, so Trustee Dubois,
I agree.
Trustee Grimes,
I agree.
Trustee Pilo Yanaratanen,
I agree.
Trustee Pop,
I agree.
Trustee Verrier,
I agree.
and I agree as well. That motion carries. Okay. The next thing on the agenda, we've been going about hour 15 or so. I move on to the agenda, or is anyone on the board in the room interested in a short adjournment?
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming.
Maybe just 2 minutes, Pat?
Okay. Let's just
Minute
pause for
break.
2 minutes.
Yeah, just a name.
Pat, we are assembling back. We just got our grateful Megan. Great Megan back.
Okay. Great.
And we have everybody here.
Great.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's move on to the collection development policy and request for reconsideration form.
Good.
Are we-
Pat, I just want to say just a thank you to Amy and her staff. I know it ends up being a very big lift to reconsider books, not only the actual reconsideration process, but just to put together these packets and all the photocopying that has to go in to it for all the emails that came in. So I just want to say thank you, because I know you're all busy enough and you have plenty enough on your plate that you have to put to the side to address this in a timely fashion. So I want you to know it's noticed and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
agree.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
The collection development policy and the RFR, I gave it to you, basically the fully combined, as with the requests that you had all talked about in the July meeting. So the July meeting essentially discussed adding the phrases of, because of this public, actually the first change was after issuing a decision for reconsideration, the Board of Trustees will not review additional requests for that title in question for 1 year. So that was one change, and that was to the actual policy itself. To the form, the changes were smaller, and they were just adding the language about the 1 year sort of moratorium, for lack of a better thing, and then putting pursuant to state law, all documents are public. So those were the changes to the policy. There's really is a little bit substantive in that it does have the clause about how long you'll entertain before you'll entertain a motion again on it. But it's not changing the criteria or the resources that we use or how we collect substantively. It just is about the request for reconsiderations.
So I thought there were a couple of interesting points made tonight as part of public comments. So I jotted down a few things. Putting together maybe a more rigorous process for requests for reconsideration. Some of the things that I heard people say is, does it have to be by more than one person? So not just one person, but there needs to be some sort of, like if you want to have a recount vote, for instance, you have to have 10 people per precinct. I'm not suggesting it's that, but I just, do we add more to it?
Making sure you guys are all set.
We are.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And then I was thinking as I was listening to people speak, there were quite a few people who spoke about Reading residents. And I don't know I know that we have in our policy that you have to be a Reading resident to draft a reconsideration, but do you also need to be a Reading resident to speak on behalf of the reconsideration or against it?
Not for public comment. Yeah, actually, technically, in public comment, you can actually just read a poem.
Okay.
Because it's public comment.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody could come in and voice a complaint about the Wakefield Library, and
okay,
they have 2 minutes to do it.
Okay.
Well, in terms of further changes or research into whether other communities require additional layers, I think that would have to be, I think that can be continued to be explored. I haven't seen something like that, but that's a very real kind of a limited due diligence of the neighboring one. So I think that's something that can be continued to be explored. But for now, I think we have a policy, and the question is whether we, keep this with the amendments. The only thing with the proposed changes here that I've had a change of heart on or reconsideration of is the change number 3, which is under the Appendix 2. And in the last sentence, which is talking about the requests, it says about pursuant to state law, that these are considered public records, barring an exemption under open meeting law. But then we say this may require releasing certain information, including identifying information such as your name. I would be inclined to modify that one of two ways: one, to excise the sentence entirely, or two, to change may to will. And I'm going to take the mea culpa on this one. Going to the town website to download the materials for tonight's meeting, the fact that the only people who were redacted were the requesters and not anyone who provided public comment, it just looks bad. And it was generated out of the last request, which I think was in a more contentious time during an election. And the belief that I still hold that these requests should be judged based on the book and our policy and nothing more, not personalities. But the fact is, you're making a request to remove something from a public library that should be public. Redacted with emails or phone numbers, whatever it may be that we would do. But I just think that the requests have to be public. I also think we may want to reconsider publishing all of the emails in the packets. I have an understanding that it's a select board now. Get those emails. They're part of the packet distributed to the board. They are public records, so if anyone requested, they would be available, but they are not also published on the website. So I think that's apart from this collection policy, but kind of food for consideration as people think about, what's the easiest way to do that, and making that available. But going back to this proposed policy, this may require releasing information. I just think, I think the requests and the names and the things that wouldn't fall under a exemption of the public meeting law should just be part of the public packet.
I would agree with it. I would agree with eliminating the last sentence in number 3, or changing it to will.
I actually prefer changing it to will, because I feel like then if it's when it's published, people know. We've been upfront, we've been transparent.
Yep. Yeah, people need to know that if they make a request that it is public and they can't sort of hide behind anonymity. I mean, if you feel that strongly about it, you shouldn't be ashamed to put your name to it.
Right.
So as a reading through this, realizing it was a bit repetitive. So would something that said, this will require releasing certain identifying information such as your name.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that scan.
Okay, I would like to rediscuss the moratorium period.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had started with 5 years originally, if I remember correctly, and then we ended up at 1. Can we rediscuss that?
I think that's a good idea too. 1 year seems like an awfully long time to perhaps have to relitigate something that we just handled the year before. I would think maybe 5's too much, but maybe we can compromise in the middle with 3.
I was thinking the same thing, Sherry. I think 3 is a number for us to consider.
Pat, if I remember correctly, when we discussed this last time, I think one of the points that you had made is, we want to have the opportunity to review material again if something substantive were to change. Am I remembering that correctly, Pat?
Yes.
And I do absolutely agree with that. I would like to think if something substantive changes, either, with a piece of material that the librarians will catch it and make the move on their own. Is that a fair assumption, Amy?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assumption. We definitely would be looking, 3 cups of tea. We moved it from nonfiction to fiction.
Yeah.
We make those changes based on good information that we understand.
Yeah.
Or circulation. If something, it's possible that something doesn't circulate. Sometimes that's why we take it out of the collection. It's not necessarily for content.
Right.
So.
You could, Tricks is an example, right? It's a 14-year-old book. It's very popular right now, but, a few years from now, it may not be.
Right.
But that's not our decision.
Right.
I'm having trouble with this hotel chair.
So,
3 years as well.
3 years as well.
Are you good with 3 years, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we would change number 2, which is also duplicated in the form, would say, will not review additional requests of the title in question for 3 years.
It's also on the collection policy, development policy too.
Okay.
So we need to change that as well. Change number 1.
Okay.
We need to change it from 1 to 3.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry.
Got to be consistent here.
Yep. All right. Okay.
I'm just going back to the third. Go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I was thinking of number 3, and I bet you were going to say on the form to request reconsideration, we need to add that it's going to require releasing information like your name. Is that what you're going to say at the end of that?
I was going to say it shouldn't say your name. It should say the name of the requester.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but it doesn't say that on the request for reconsideration.
It does actually. That's the only place it says it.
Well, on the form it doesn't. At the form it doesn't.
Oh, I see. It's a separate page. I see.
At the bottom of the form it doesn't.
I see you, because I wonder if I cut that off because it was an extra page. I will make sure that squeezes in there.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's really kind of like number 4 then, on the second page.
Yep.
Great.
On the form, saying your name makes sense, but in the policy, it should be the requester's name.
Yeah. Because people, when they fill out the form, need to know that their name is not public.
Yeah.
Once they send the form in. Otherwise, we're kind of kidding them until, I caught you. That wouldn't be very nice.
Right.
One last suggestion is on the form that someone would fill out. Should we have address 1 and address 2, so it's obvious that if you were to live in a building with lots of apartment numbers, that you would be prompted to include that information?
So just line 1, yeah.
A great point.
Yeah.
Or
you see that on.
Or you could use part of that line and not extend the line all the way, and then put unit number or apartment number or something like that 3/4 of the way through, because you're going to have that extra line to put in the fact that the name could be is public.
Good idea.
Okay. So I'll get Megan will work her magic and we'll get it all on the one page. But yeah, address 1, address 2. It is PDF fillable now. We did take that, and we're going to make sure that whatever new version is also PDF fillable or printable.
That's great.
Great.
Good.
Okay. Would you like to? Go ahead. Yeah, we need to make a motion.
Yeah.
I move that we accept. Go ahead, Andrew.
We accept the changes to the library policy as presented.
I second.
Okay.
Any further discussion? No? Trustee Dubois.
I agree.
Trustee Grimes.
I agree.
Trustee Pilo Yadaratnam.
I agree.
Am I close?
Not bad.
That's not good.
And Pat, I was so impressed.
I was. Pillow Nyanaratnam, but that's not bad.
Trustee Pop.
He seems to have popped off.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Trustee Verrier.
I agree.
And I agree as well.
So you can just note that Cappy left the meeting at approximately 8:40.
Okay. So motion carries, and we move on to agenda item 5, the meeting room use report.
Okay, so I wanted to give just a brief summary of the use of the meeting rooms over the past few years. And there he is. Okay. And then just by comparison, so I went back to pre-pandemic. So in 2019, the usage was total number of community organizations and individuals using the space was 319. We are about 75% of what it was at that point in time. It's increased every year since the pandemic began. And if you look, I put a little graphic in your packet, and it just shows the differences. So in fiscal year 2022, we had 126 outside organizations use the space. And then in fiscal year 23, it went up to 200. Did I grab it? I was gonna grab, let me see if I did. We will reach that for the next fiscal year. And one of the plans is to publicize meeting room availability over the next year as well, as part of our services PR plan. So that's what I sort of have for an update on the usage. I also wanted to let you know that we are working with the town IT department to upgrade technology in both the conference and the community rooms, and this will allow for a more streamlined hybrid option. We have the equipment available because IT had it from when they upgraded both the police department and the town hall. And we're communicating now with the AV company that upgraded both the town hall and police department to start the installation process. I'm going to say there's probably a 6 months timeline. I don't really know where we are in the process with that.
Are we wholly paying for that ourselves, or is that in the IT's budget?
I think we're going to be paying for that ourselves.
Okay.
We're going to be paying for the installation. Okay. We already have the technology itself, the equipment itself.
So if that's, just as a side note, if that is over a certain amount of money, we just ask we have good business practices for procurement, and we would come back to the trustees, because I don't know that was on our supplemental spending recommendation.
I think it was.
Okay, maybe it was.
I'm almost positive it was.
Yeah, but it's, are they using ABI?
Yes.
Okay, so great, they're a good company.
Yep. ABI was the initial company that did the installation initially in the building. We switched to another company, but we are probably going to be going back to ABI because they know the equipment. Per something that Monette had asked me at the last month's meeting about credit card usage for meeting room payments, I'm working with the town treasurer to implement that. That timeline is, again, that's going to be about 6 months. It's more of a procedure than I thought it was going to be. And so I'm going to set up meetings with her to make it happen. That's really all I have to report about that. And so then the next thing was talking about the meeting room policy. Do you want me to just jump into it?
Can I just ask a question? Oh, sorry. I have a question about usage. Do you mind if I ask it?
Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. Do you feel like
only the public needs my permission to talk in this part of the meeting. You can do whatever you want.
I'm just curious. I mean, obviously the pandemic affected everything. But are there specific organizations that you haven't heard from at all since the pandemic who were predominant users? And I'm just curious if there's
No. For the most part, we've seen most of them come back.
That's great.
So the Reading Craftsmen, they use it regularly, and they were somebody who'd always used it before. We have the Reading Neighbors Network. They've come back. We have a lot of sports. So the football commissioners, they use the space. So we're definitely seeing a lot more of the organizations come back. There are a couple that still use, we still have the virtual option, and so they use that. But we're definitely seeing them come back. I also just want to push having people actually know that they can use this space.
Yeah. It's great that we're still offering the virtual option. That's great.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yep. Does anyone else have any questions about that, or should I jump into the policy?
Let's move on to the policy, please.
So there were only minor edits to the policy that we want to suggest. On page 1 of the policy, we wanted to change it so that registries, people who want to use the room must be a Reading resident, and then removing the need to have a card as well. So the Reading resident is fine.
They have to prove that, correct?
They have to prove it. They have to give an address.
The license or something?
We
Did they show you
go,
anything?
We should.
We're working on that. We're working on that. And one of the things that we do is if they do say that they're not a Reading resident or Reading, part of Reading organization, is that they have somebody else come in and basically book the space, sponsor them.
Okay.
So there was that. And then we also wanted to change under eligibility, I also want to change the fees and registration requests to be approved by the Board of Library Trustees rather than director. So this is, I think this is on page.
That's the same page.
Same page. Yeah.
Eligibility. Yeah,
Yeah.
eligibility, paragraph 2.
I think, and that's because you approve everything else about collecting boxes and everything.
Yes.
So
that's the example of like when Girls Rising came to us and said, we want to show the movie Brave and we're going to charge and it's going to go to our.
Yeah, you guys approve that and it's.
Our fund. Yeah, okay.
And I feel better having, or not I feel better, but we think it should be more of a collective discussion.
Sense.
And then we wanted to also, we wanted to remove under general rules, number 3, removing the word online, as some people book in person or they call up and they book it through a staff member. So we wanted to remove that line to make it clear. And then under number 4, we wanted to clarify the wording and change it to say that to be at least 5 days in advance because people were confused about that. And then under 7, add the word, something about initial as fees.
The initial agreed upon fee.
Yes, the initial agreed upon fee might change if someone adds technical help after the fact or you supervision after the fact. So those are basically it. So I presented to you for your approval and discussion.
And you worked with Louise and Desiree on this?
I worked with Louise on that. Louise Hetherington, she works very closely with me on the meeting rooms. She approves most of them. We have a lot of conversation and she takes care of the majority of it now. And Megan helps as well.
Megan helps, yep.
I would say that, I don't know if anyone would agree, but I think we could probably vote on this because the change is so minimal.
I actually have one question, sorry.
It's okay. You're allowed.
So number 4 says all rental applications must be submitted online 5 business days.
At least 5 business days.
But then number 10 says if you're requesting technical assistance, you have to do that no less than 7 days.
Oh. Oh, that is, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, so.
So should we just say 7? Or if it's 5 days,
it should be 5 days. It should just
5 days.
Mm-hmm.
But you need the extra 2 days for technical support. If it's 5 days, you should have a clause in it that says unless you need technical support.
No, I think also 7 days is not 7 business days. I think if you take that out to 5 business days, you'll probably end up at 7.
Okay, so change number 10 to be 5 business days.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah. My only comment was already, addressed, which is the one thing I've heard is the ease of payment. So the easier and quicker the payment, that's probably easier for everybody. But
yes,
you're on it. So
yep.
I don't think we can vote on this today. It wasn't listed as such on the agenda. So unless there's a time sensitive nature, I would just say kick it and use our regular policy of doing it next month, voting next month.
Doing it next month, and it'll fly by like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cooling off period for you guys to change your mind about anything. Thank you.
like the collection policy, will come in with plenty of edits in September.
And just also, in this, I just want to note, in this era of inflation, we have not decided to change anything for the fees. We are keeping them low and slow. It just really helps to make up for any custodial or staffing time that we need.
Right. Bargain at twice the price.
It is, it really is.
Okay, anything else on the policy and fee review?
Anything?
Hearing none, we'll move on to 7, Landscape Committee. 2 issues, one adding ex officio non-voting members and second, approval of funds for exploratory concept and design. So let's start with adding the non-voting members. Who wants to share that?
I'm just going to, I don't think that Cappy or Cherry knew that I requested this on the agenda, but this had come up, and I think it actually came up because I wasn't able to attend July. It might have even come up in between the July meetings, that we did, I think Cherry reported that we did meet with Fidel and Ben Cares and Andrew McNichol. And at that meeting, we were told that it would be helpful to have the language about the ad hoc committee to include ex officio employees as consultants, meaning Fidel needed to be kept in the loop. And so the trustees could vote or approve. I don't even know if you have to vote or just agree that the makeup of the committee would stand as is, with the addition of ex officio members at the discretion of either the chair or vice chair, or if you guys wanted to name the town manager and staff as needed. I think it just would legitimize them, inviting them to meetings and their time and things like that. And that's all I'll say about that. Cherry, did you have anything to add from that meeting?
No, I mean, I think they seem to want to be included, and I think it's important because I think they're going to provide us with a lot of help. You know, they know stuff we don't know, and they know people that maybe we can contact for, say, preliminary information about landscape architects or whatever, and getting perhaps someone to come out and look and maybe make some suggestions. So if they can help streamline any aspect of the project, I mean, that certainly would be to our advantage.
Just a note to Michelle, Cappy is unable to unmute after he came back on.
You should be good. What did I
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Then I'll touch on the funds. Basically, last month I included in the supplemental spending I included an estimate of $20,000 for exploratory conceptual design for the Library Landscape Committee. And there was no official vote on that. I don't know that there has to be, but I just wanted to reiterate and make it clear amidst all those numbers that I presented last month that there is earmarked money for that, and that the chair, vice chair, and that the committee itself has permission from the board to make use of those funds as the opportunity arises, not have, like, if it arose tomorrow, they wouldn't have to wait till September meeting, or if it arose, whatever, that they know that that's sort of in there, that's understood that to be able to be used. And I believe that was coming out of state aid or gifts, one or the other. Oh, it's probably in my report. So I don't know if you have to vote on any of these things or just not strongly object to or support. It's up to you.
And so the funds are the up to, right, to see what's being used. And then, because I know at the last meeting, Andrew had some comments about how there's also town surveys that we may be able to take advantage of or piggyback on. Are those still options?
Yeah, so this wasn't for a survey. This was literally for just getting a it's like an Activitas or like some GNAP or some like company that's been used for conceptual. And that gives you the order of magnitude, hopefully, and it's sort of the first step. And it's not a promise, it's just a conceptual idea. So then you go out to bid and then you go on to the next steps. And it would probably have a survey or something like that.
I would also think too that if they did something preliminary, they would give us some rough idea of how much their preliminary plan would cost. So we would have an idea of how much of it we could perhaps do, or how hard it would be, or easy it would be to raise the money, or what things we would do and what things we couldn't do. I mean, it would give us some sort of idea of how to proceed forward, which we really don't have any idea right now. I have no real idea of how much this is going to cost, because I don't know what somebody will actually say we could do, nor do I know what kind of materials, et cetera, will be used, or how much labor is involved, and so on. So we really need to have a ballpark figure somewhere along the line, I think, before we advance. So this 20K will kind of get us there, I hope.
In terms of the vote or not, when the committee was established and with the current makeup, I can't recall, but I don't recall us like voting in members. I know we talked about who
you did, because you had to establish it as an ad hoc committee. So I believe there was an ad hoc committee to be made up of 2 trustees, 4 residents, 2 staff members, and a neighbor and some residents. So you would just be amending the.
I move that we allow the chairman of the ad hoc committee to add associate and non-voting members as he or she deems fit, necessary.
Lovely.
I second.
A second. Any question or discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Jerry.
I agree.
Andrew.
Agree.
Monique.
Agree.
Cappy.
Agree.
Monette.
Agree.
And I agree. Getting a little more casual as we go into the second, as we head to the second hour.
First names. Way to go.
I'm supposed to be at a casino night right now. Okay.
He's trying to wrap this up.
Put $2 down for me.
Unfortunately, it's fake money, which means I'll do well. How about on the approval of funds?
I don't think you need a vote. I just basically, if we come to with a bill.
Yeah, that's when we'll approve it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you won't nobody's going to be surprised. Just sometimes those presentations I whip through and the numbers just go. I just wanted to make sure that you can go back to that supplemental request. I can actually give it to you again if you have questions about that.
Great. Okay.
Crack on.
So if we finished up 7, number 8 is the financial report.
Everything's fine. This
So let's go on to number 9.
Any additional detail you want?
I'm waiting for someone to comment on the fact that it's a $113,000 warrant, but it's a large warrant because
I was bored, but it went back and read.
Like it has our annual Noble payment. We used to try and pay the Noble throughout the year, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't save us any money, so we just pay it all out. We have $20,000 for our overdrive. We pay a lot of our databases up front. But we're doing fine. We had we had one nice gift from Cherry. Thank you in memory of Neil Mixis, who was the husband of Kathy Mixis, longtime employee. And we don't expect to have a warrant that large again for another year. So, and it's way less than buying, like a piece of, vehicle or something like that. So just rest easy. Does anyone have any questions? We haven't quite closed FY23. Sharon, I think the town accountant will do that in the next month or so. But we are getting ready to approve, to start submitting our FY23 numbers, year-end close numbers to the state to apply for state aid. So that will go out in the next month or two.
No.
saw in the warrant about the mural, so we paid the first half of the mural. What's the timing on that?
The timing is, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but.
You want to wait for the director's report, that's fine.
Yeah, if you just, hang on, I've got to get to the timing, so.
Yeah. So I guess the only thing I'd add on that in the warrant is just the reminder that we, from the last time we had the overview of the Noble performance and usage, that we're getting a bang for our buck on that.
Yep.
You know, it's
a really good bio.
Huge buy. Really good.
Okay.
Okay. So director's report.
Thank you. And I won't go through the July snapshot, but I did, Noble provides this, so I just threw it in there because I know in the last couple of meetings we've talked about giving some context to the snapshots that we give. And this just tells you, you know, they just give you the last few months and it'll tell you how well you did compared to the last year, for the several months. But in general, we're trending, about where we were last year, but just creeping up. In terms of the overall statistics, again, I'm giving you July snapshot, the June snapshot, and then the July from the last year. Not as pretty as the little chart that Noble provides. But one of the things that just really struck me is we continue to really aggressively grow in our overdrive use. And yeah, so that's one area that we continue to see an increase in. We had a lot of programs this year, this summer, and in July, 52 is, if you do math, they're doing almost 2 a day. But it will slow down in August as people are on vacations and things like that. There was a request in one of our last meetings to start talking about the patio. So we talked about with the staff, and here are a list of concerns, or I guess items, points for us to consider as we create a policy. It doesn't have to be even a policy. It could be just a set procedure of expectations. The biggest concerns have to do with about safety, about having children under the age of 9, which they're not supposed to be. If you're under the age of 9, you're supposed to be accompanied by adult anyway, but definitely outside. This children's room staff have the discretion to close it, period, end of story. There is some concern about people bringing stuff out and then not bringing it back in, and staff turning into picking up the room, the space after everything. So that's why there's a couple bullet points about keeping the space clean. I think they made some good points about, if we do this, we need to relook at the furniture that's out there. It needs to be, right now they're like heavy, you got to drag the table across, makes a lot of noise. It's not going to blow away either, but we need to think about what would be most convenient and flexible to be able to use for library programming as well as just casual seating. If it's open to the public, they made a request that it actually be designated as children's or family space, or it's designated open to everyone. And once you open it to everyone, then that means that we can have lone adults on the patio and they will have more access to the children's area. Now, this can be looked at one of 2 ways. Obviously, one is a lot happier than the other. I just think it's something to really think about and consider as we decide what the purpose of that space is. There is a big window there. Activities out on the patio might be distracting for a little cloud corner, but we certainly don't want to block off those windows because we do want to have some line of sight. So we want to be very, very specific and very careful about what it would be used for. And then as we go forward with this, certainly not today, but if you want to go into the discussion about cameras, that is something that needs to be discussed in executive session. So that's just for you. Yes.
I think it would be a good idea not to have random adults there, because it is, the second floor is basically the children's room.
Yeah.
And I don't think adults should have access to it unless the adults are accompanied by a child.
Yeah. And
adults can go outside on their own wherever they want. I mean, they can sit out, on the benches outside if they want to be outdoors.
Yeah. I think. So go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I think it's the question is, okay, if a parent has a kid at a story time, and then the parent just wants to like stop outside for while the thing's there. But that I would read under children's and family space kind of thing.
Right. If the kid's there for a story hour, and the parent's outdoors, the parent is still connected to the child, even though they're not literally together.
Right.
Whereas if someone just went up there because they felt like going out there and they had no kid, and I don't know, that doesn't sound like a good thing.
Well, hopefully the landscape committee is going to come up with a nice recommendation.
That will be great.
To be able to use other outdoor space.
So I'll just say we're heading into the fall. I think you could continue this conversation in September, October, but not expect to have anything implemented until the spring. So it gives us a little bit of time. I don't think there's a real rush on it. But I think we have some really good feedback from the staff. We can craft together some policies and a phased implementation. And it also gives us time to look into different types of furniture. In the worst case scenario is we're push it off to FY25 when we need to get more money or something like that.
Okay.
It says access ends 30 minutes before closing. Is there enough light to use it after dark or?
That's a really good question.
I bet there isn't now.
Yeah. I guess maybe they're thinking the Fridays and Saturdays, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, there might be like after sunset or 30 minutes before closing, whichever comes first. That's a really great point. So the next item, I just really want to bring it to your attention. We've seen a pattern of nonfiction LGBTQ books in the teen area being systematically hidden and moved. We have been working on different various measures to reduce this with the collection and, with staffing. It is very disappointing behavior. It interferes with others' use of the library. And I just really want to stress that it is complete and utter waste of staff time. It's very frustrating for the staff. It's very, it feels very personal, and I know that it's probably not personal. Whoever's doing it it's not being personal, but it ends up taking a bit of an emotional toll on the staff to have to, I have to sit down there too and, look and see if anyone's hiding anything. I will say at present, there's no vandalism or damage or theft of the materials. That's why it's just sort of, it's bringing the toe right up to the line, as it were. Should that happen, we would definitely involve the authorities, and that is not going to happen. Or whatever, I will call them in if that should happen. But it's a minor issue in terms of whatever, it's just somebody hiding books. And if you just think about it that way, it's mildly annoying, but it is happening in such a pattern of practice that it is problematic for the staff and a waste of time. So,
do we have any sense of who's doing this?
Yeah, I think the staff are starting to get an idea. And it's tricky because we don't want to, we want to reach out and reduce barriers and keep things positive, and understand that the library is for everybody. I think
hiding books isn't.
Hiding books is not acceptable.
Not for everybody.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. So once we get to the point where we need to take any sort of action, obviously there would be privacy things involved. We would want to handle it to encourage people to still come to the library, but to use it appropriately. I just think that, one of the reasons I put it on here is because it is, I don't want to say it's like a straw that breaks the camel's back, that, nothing's broken. But I think it's been a trying year for the staff. So I just want to kind of call that out, and all that we do to try and support our employees. And I will say this last week, we have had a tremendous number of people emailing us and saying what a great job the staff does. So we are trying to share that out with all of the staff. I just want to let you know that it's a little bit of a pain point for us as employees.
I wondered if the surveillance cameras work in there and help you identify this or not.
I will have cameras in the building.
We only have cameras looking at the exits, Sherry, but we can identify through various other things.
Okay.
Oh, like by checking at one time and checking at another time, we can kind of narrow some stuff down. So we are trying to be circumspect about that.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Thanks for sharing.
Exactly. Want to acknowledge, like, absolutely sorry to hear that and know that takes time. And that it can be very disheartening.
Yeah. Moving on, I don't know if you noticed our new signage. Welcome. Welcome. And so there's some great signage over the elevator, and we also have a great new audiobook sign. Thanks to Michelle and Desiree for working on that with our designer, Martin Sorger. The RS report is ready, and we just actually, Pat signed it today, and I'm working on the financial report as mentioned. Getting back to Monette, your question about the tween spot, we did request, it says tween spot bids, but it's actually a request for quotes for the fabrication and installation of the millwork and shelving. We got that. We have a great contract for that. It's the same person who did the design. We are working through the contracting process with that. His piece of it, the fabrication and installation, is going to take probably 8 to 12 weeks. And then the mural is woven into that. Some of it will have to be done before he puts things up. Some of it will have to be done after he puts things up. So it depends on where. So the muralist and the fabricator are working together. Honestly, it's the biggest holdup now is just, we're working through insurance and things like that. So got to get the contract signed, but he hopes to start it sooner than later. I put an RMLD level 3 charger update that was supposed to go in last Thursday, but we had a little bit of a rainstorm on Thursday, so they were not installing anything electrical on the property. So I'm assuming that will come up either this week or next week, weather depending, but they do have it and they do want to install it. So that's a level 3 fast charger, so we expect to have that soon.
Do you have any sense if the chargers are used?
Yeah, I would say, I see them used multiple times per day.
Great.
Yeah. And I think it's only going to get more common. Like, I'm here, I have $3, I'll charge.
Great.
I'll charge my car. I won't go through all of this, but we have some great new collections. We have a great new museum pass, Garden in the Woods. Actually, the financial fit is a big deal through EBSCO. The financial fit is something that we're going to really push, working on financial literacy over the next year. And then we've had some really great programs this summer. On September 30th, on the horizon, September 30th, I know this is a ways away. Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
There's going to be a community read-in. It is statewide, and it's basically a way for people to come in and read. So out on the lawn, hopefully it'll be a nice day. Bring your blanket, bring your chairs, and you can read whatever you'd like. It's basically just a way to celebrate the freedom to read as a community. We will have a story time for a short part of the time. We've invited various people in town. You've been invited. I think that you should have, the trustees have been invited, and actually don't know if the letter went out. But you will be invited, and you will see something soon, inviting you to come and attend and just read with us. So we sent.
Is it all day?
It only goes till noon.
So it's what, 9 to noon?
10 to noon. Yeah.
Okay.
Bring your book.
They've invited.
No, not a problem.
You're inviting a lot of our governmental representatives.
Yep. So we've invited, yes.
Yeah. Yep. And this is part of the campaign to celebrate the freedom to read, to celebrate our First Amendment rights, and to just sort of show solidarity through libraries. There are several bills in front of the state Congress that pertain specifically to libraries and securing public libraries, in particular, securing the rights and for public libraries. So we're watching all of that very closely.
Can you tell me when Banned Book Week is? Do you know that?
I think it's the same week as the Freedom to Read. I think it's the last week in
or first week in October.
Yeah. Either last week. Let's see. Oh, it's October 1st through the 7th.
So it's the Sunday.
Like right
Starts
before.
the Sunday. Yeah.
And I presume we're going to have some sort of
Yep.
big deal stuff on that.
Yeah, we have 2 confirmed events. I think one for young adults and one for adults. Yep. So.
And will there be displays or something
We will make sure to have displays.
of like banned books or something like that?
Yep.
Okay, good. Excellent.
And just very quickly, personnel-wise, our newest children's librarian, Emma, has started. We're really excited to have Emma. She's working out great. But on the sad news is Allie Dowds has given her notice, and she will be leaving next week. Is her last week. She gave us a month's notice, which was more than generous. And she's really been a great presence here, and she's really helped. I mean, you've seen her in action, listened to her program summaries with her frameworks and her pillars, and just really done an amazing job. Also, I think this came out just after the last trustee meeting, which is Sudeshna has transitioned out of her role also as the Director of Equity and Social Justice. She is working on a contract to get us through our DEI community assessment. So Fidel has worked that out with Sudeshna, but she has taken another full-time job. And I am on the search committee for her replacement, and we're starting, Allie's job will be posted tomorrow, and we have an internal search committee for that as well. Yeah, we have interviews for the DESJ starting next week. And you can see we have a lot of different people involved with that first round.
And you said you had a ton of applicants, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of applicants, 50 like in the first week. And I wanted to flag, there's no decision being made right now, but I wanted to flag, and it will come up at a select board meeting. During this whole process, we've talked about the possibility of moving the DESJ as a direct report to the town manager. It's not unexpected, and it could happen as early as November town meeting, or it could come into effect in FY25, or I didn't put this on there, maybe it will never happen. It's just, we're just talking about it, but it would just change it would change the, I'm sorry, just some points to remember, that changes to the organizational structures at the discretion of the town manager with input from department heads, meaning this is not unusual in some ways. Like, it's not unusual to sort of say, well, this person reports to this person. Let's move it to the planning division. That makes more sense, the permitting or whatever. Just like I might move someone from collection services to public services if that's what we needed. So it's a little unusual to move it between departments like this, but that's that classification, not the compensation, that's that classification schedule, and the organizational chart, I guess, is where we go with that. And I think, Andrew, you can attest to at the time of those meetings, it was always like, should it be here? Should it be there? We'll move it here.
There's already been a lot of debate about that, and yeah.
So it's not a surprise.
Both.
And it would impact the cost center, the library's budget line, but Fidel's very aware of that. And he and I had talked a lot about our municipal appropriations requirement and making sure that we are always eligible for state aid. And then the select board actually is scheduled to talk about this at their meeting next Tuesday, which I will either attend or Zoom into.
So when you said the select board plans to discuss this, do they need to approve it? Is it a vote?
No, this is why I'm saying movement of the internal staff is all at the, is at the discretion. Like, Fidel reorganized the whole department by there was a public services and administrative services department. He put those all under the assistant town manager. And so he changed that whole structure and created a new, business director and IT director. Like, IT was never its own department. Now it is. So he has that. The budget is actually not even approved by select board. It's approved by town meeting. Mm-hmm. Right. So, but it is important, and it does affect, just like, if I were to tell you I wasn't going to hire a new public services director, you guys might be like, well, thanks for saving us the money, but Amy, but that seems like kind of a nutty idea. Let's talk about that. So I think it's really more that kind of discussion, making sure, does this make sense? Does the workflow make sense? What's the point and purpose? So I hope that makes sense, but nothing has been decided by any stretch of the imagination. And then just some lists of our professional development. That's all I have for your director's report, because I've been plenty busy doing all sorts of other things. Mm-hmm.
Going back to the hiring process and the restructuring.
Yeah.
I mean, my only question and concern is obviously if something shifts and it is entirely, at that discretion, that's fine. But if the dollars are still tied, I just want to make sure that if we, what our responsibility we as a board have over that position, if it moves or if dollars, because if it's a clean break and then it's no longer our responsibility, then, so be it. But if it's not, I just think we need to know kind of where that goes.
The dollars piece will be presented in as the FY25. That's the key tipping point. That number in a proposal for the FY25 budget is what, make sure that we stay eligible for state aid. And that is where the trustees will take a vote on a budget and say, this is the budget we must have at minimum to make sure that we have state aid. And that's where you're, and we'll be very clear about that. So.
Okay.
Minutes.
Any other questions on that? I just would like to dovetail with a few of the other comments, and particularly with the books being moved, that I think staff has just been doing an amazing job under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of negative press. And I think the professionalism really does show through. And you've already addressed it, Amy, but even the last few hours before the meeting, emails continue to come in. There was also comments in the chat on Zoom as well that are, they're not just talking about the request. They're not just talking about the books. Several have really expressed the deep admiration and support and appreciation for you and the staff's work. So those are things that really should be circulated.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Approval of the July 10th, 2023 meeting minutes. I've already gone on record that Megan is outdoing herself month after month with these. I hope she could hear names and addresses earlier tonight better than I could. But open up the floor to see if anyone has any comments or changes to these minutes.
We're all stunned by their incredible quality.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm not hearing anything. I would be happy to entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We've got a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Go to the roll call vote. Jerry.
Let's go for those minutes. I approve.
Andrew.
I approve.
Monique.
Approved.
Cappy.
I approve.
Monette.
I approve.
Another 6-0. I approve as well. And future items is the continuation of the community DEI assessment. Being a future item,
Yep.
I suggest it be discussed in the future.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I know this is weird. This was formerly new business and we're just trying to get used to this. It's just the holding pen so that if something had happened earlier in the meeting, you might want to put it down, like discuss this again in October or in 6 months or something like that. So it's just a placeholder, and it is a visual way for us to either, amend or whatever going forward.
Right. And depending on what we do with the upstairs space, the executive session discussion about security can be a potential future item down the line as well.
You guys really want to stay here for a lot longer, don't you?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Move to second.
All right. Hold on. We still got a roll call.
Oh, that's right.
So, roll call vote, starting with Jerry.
I'm all in favor.
Andrew.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go for it. Monique Pilo Yanaratanam.
Agreed.
Kathy, Mr. Pop.
Agreed.
Monette.
Agreed.
And I will agree as well.
All right.
Motion closed.
Good job, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Hey,
Good night.
take care all.
Bye.